Another question. When I have looked at some of the photos of myself flat water paddling, I can see a huge amount of flex in my paddle shaft. Is this a design feature to save my tendons, or am I being robbed of efficiency? If my carbon bicycle flexed this much, I'd have to throw it away. He's using a 2-piece paddle, weighs 180 pounds, and is wondering maybe 1-piece shaft is better? Just curious.
I don't know about the 1-piece, 2-piece argument as far as stiffness goes. The reason the paddles flex are, there are constraints. If you allowed me to make a shaft that was this big in diameter, I guarantee you it won't break. But we got to make it small. Your hand has to be able to go around it. So that adds a constraint there, right there. Like I said, my basic philosophy is comfort. I'd rather have a little bit of flex and have my hands not cramping up or have them, like this, trying to grab onto the thing. We could stiffen the paddles by loading up a lot of carbon inside of it, but then again, what you get high weight. I wouldn't worry about the flex. I don't think it's robbing you of a lot of efficiency. Really, what we find is what makes people fast are good paddling technique, blade work, using the big muscle groups. Go to the gym and get strong. Do your cross training and get your cardiovascular up. That will do more for you than having a stiffer shaft.
So I know that that is probably a really in-depth question if we ask you about paddling technique, but can you just show us maybe in really quick what you're considering a pretty basic good paddling technique, something that we can continually practice, especially doing this stand-up thing?
Yeah, okay. You gotta understand, I come from a canoe background, and so and this is probably, when I talk about paddling technique, surfing's a different situation. Surfing, you just got to stay on the damn board when you're rocking and rolling. Whatever floats your boat. And at that point, I think that's why I see a lot of surfers, they're paddling, if the board is going away from me, they're paddling both feet basically parallel on the rail, because they got to switch sides really fast, right? That's probably a good stance to have here in the middle of the board. But I think if you want to go fast, I think what you want to do is you want to be able to get a lot more of your large muscle groups in place. Anytime you're paddling, you basically want to stay over your basic tripod, right? You want to have a good stance. You don't want to be bent over and have your center of gravity outside your balance points on your feet. So that's an important thing. I think you would want to be able to get your legs and your core and your lats involved. Paddling is very little arms except at the back of the stroke. And basically what you'd want to do is you're going to want to somehow tilt your hips and rotate your torso. And that kind of movement here is going to derive you the most power. Once again, in a surfing situation, it's questionable if you're going to be able to rotate your hips a lot, because balance is a huge issue out there. So this is mainly more flat water. What I do, and this is just my way of doing it, is when I'm paddling on the right side of my board, my left foot is forward. So I'm like this. What I do is, as I get close to switching sides, I slide a foot up, take a couple more strokes, then I'll slide my foot back, and that way I can get my hips involved in the stroke. Works great on flat water. I don't do that when it gets rough. That's just kind of a basic deal. I also try to stay somewhat upright, not too much leaning forward, and it just has to do with balance. And also, I really don't want to get my lower back involved too much in the paddling stroke, because I don't think it's good for your lower back. Yes, I am living testament to bad back because of paddling, the bulging disc in the lower back. So I try to stay upright.
What muscle groups should you be using if you're not using your lower back?
You want to use your lats, you want to use your legs, and you can be using your core. Some guys crunch down a little bit. You don't want to be, lower back would be lifting up. You don't want to get too much of this going inside of there. That's, some guys are really fast doing that, and more power to you. But it's, generally speaking, it's a little bit painful.
How about rotator cuff kind of issues? Are you finding that some paddlers getting that? Because I know for me, as I was paddling a lot, I was starting to pick up rotator cuff problems. Yeah, well, I can only speak mainly from outrigger background, because this is kind of a new sport. Something that helps that is your top hand. When we're paddling in a canoe, we try to keep our hands lower. So like my top hand doesn't really go higher than my eyes. The water's down there anyway. So you shorter paddle then?
Shorter paddle. Stand-up is different a little bit because you really are varying your height quite a bit. You know, you bend at the knees sometimes, so you're, you know, we commonly think of 8 inches taller than your height as a good starting point for a paddle. Well, if I bend my knees, I've suddenly shrunk a couple inches, and so that causes a problem. But if you are getting rotator stuff, probably having some flex will help. But the other one is, it might be your paddle's too tall. It also could be you threw too many baseballs as a kid. You know, I would say if you're having rotator problems, go talk to a physical therapist or somebody. I mean, go talk to a professional, do some strengthening exercise in that area.
My friend showed me, he said that I was doing an incorrect paddle stroke. I was doing this kind of a round motion instead of bringing my hand back up this way.
Oh, you're dropping your hands really far?
Well, see what happens is as you bring the thing back, bringing the arm up this way, and that creates some problems.
I don't know if it'll create problems. I mean, he could be right, person. But I would say anything you do in your paddling stroke, try to be as efficient as possible. So, you know, from this position, basically you just want to come back up. Any kind of dropping and doing all kinds of extra maneuvering isn't going to be, it's just extraneous motion. It doesn't really help you go forward.
So the paddle should be going from straight back, straight forward?
No, it flares out to the side, but basically you want the hand to come. The bottom hand's going to flare the paddle around, but the top hand's basically taking a track as straight as possible back up to a starting position. Okay. You know, something we do also in other paddling is we kind of paddle with our hands kind of more upright. We try to get the shaft somewhat, you know, perpendicular to the ground, I guess.
Like straight up, right?
Yeah. Straight up is kind of hard because then you got to contort. I mean, you got to be comfortable, but you don't want to be laid over too much like a kayak paddle or something like that. You know, try to get a little bit up, right?
Okay. Next question is, I would be interested in your thoughts on flex and the relationship to shoulder and elbow issues. I have 4 different paddles, and I finally determined that flex is good, like Blaine said. I now have a quick blade paddle, which is like a noodle compared to C4, but I have no pain in my shoulders anymore. Expensive, but cheaper than surgery and being off the water.
A paddle does have to have some give. You know, if you're prone to that type of stress injuries and you're having pain, possibly a more flexible paddle could be beneficial to you. You know, like I said, I'm really about comfort for the paddler. I don't believe you really, I mean, having something that totally bends over. I mean, this is within, you got to put my statements within parameters, you know. If it has some flex, it's probably good for you. The other thing I wonder about, you know, stiffness and strength are not the same thing. And so one of the other things we have in surfing, we have the wipeout, and that introduces a whole new level of bad stuff happening to equipment. I think maybe some flexibility in the paddle is good in that situation.
Okay.